excited to talk to you because I've spoken to a lot of people who host retreats, facilitate like chefs, photographers, even marketing, which I know, there's some of that in what you do. But what stuck out for me is the business advisor piece, because that's another really big piece about leading and hosting retreats, that we tend to forget that at the end of the day, even if we want to create these beautiful moments and spaces for our community, it's a business and it needs to be sustainable so that we can continue showing up and doing what we do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's one of my favorite pieces of it. I love the retreat space, but I love the business side of it. So I'm excited to talk to you about it today too.
Yeah. So how did you get into, business advising and then specifically in the retreat industry?
Yeah. So I've been starting businesses myself since before I was 19. I had little businesses, but they weren't, right? It's kind of like what we're talking about here. They weren't actual businesses. They were things that I was running, but I wasn't actually running them as businesses. And I started my first actual business when I was 19, which was a nonprofit organization. So I do have background in nonprofits and for-profit businesses. And so I started my first business then, my second business when I was 21, and then my last business so far, because clearly every few years a new one comes, but started that one when I was 28. And what I found was, in my experience, both in my career with corporate logistics as well as in starting businesses, was that I had a unique perspective on how to create sustainable businesses. And I was able to really look at people's strengths and weaknesses from an aerial view and then break down ways that they could enter their industry in a unique way. And so that's how I got into the business advising. And then as far as how I got into the retreat space, I was a corporate meeting and event planner. I started very, very young in that industry. And that was another thing that I started in, and I just picked it up very quickly. I was very passionate about it. And I was good at it, which we all love that when we find something that we love and we're good at it and we're like, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
Can I do this forever? So did that. I actually still work in that industry on a consulting basis. But as I started to go through my own personal growth and self-development and spiritual growth, I was introduced to the retreat industry and I fell in love. I went on my first retreat after my son was about a year old. I was in a super, super dark place in my life, just recognizing that I didn't know who I was. I had always been just who I was supposed to be as a daughter, as a woman, as a wife, as a mom. And I didn't even know what made me happy. And so I went to my first retreat. Not only did I fall in love with the retreat industry, but I noticed, again, that unique skill that I have to look at something from an aerial view. I looked at the retreat industry as with that aerial view, and I was like, oh, there are some holes in this industry currently, and they're holes that I can fill. And so that is how this business, SM Specialty Events, was born.
That's awesome. So you found your ikigai.
Yes.
And that's great when that happens. Retreats are always that place that kind of take you out of the dark place and give you clarity. And I think that's why they're so awesome. One of the reasons and why we love them so much. So, yeah. And then this business aspect. So I reached out to you because I learned about you through your Retreat Professionals Network, which is more like your community.
Yes.
But how does the business advising aspect of that work?
Yeah. So there's a lot of groundwork that has been laid over the last 8 years within this business that has fed into the Retreat Professionals Network being born. So I won't go into all of that, but the industry is expanding exponentially, right? We all know that. We see it happening. And when I entered the industry, it wasn't this large. It was very, very different when I entered the industry back in 2017. And so as I saw this exponential growth happening, I tapped into what does the industry need right now? What does it need today? And this was over the last couple of years, honestly. And that is where the Retreat Professionals Network was born, because I have a unique set of background in the industry because I've been in it for a little bit longer. I have the business advising that I've done. And then I also saw that we needed a space for people to come into to receive the education that they need to be a retreat business owner. Like you talked about at the beginning, I think oftentimes people may see a retreat, they see what's happening in the industry, or they go on retreat and they think, oh, this is easy, I'm going to do it. And what they don't know is everything that goes into not just the retreat experience. They don't see all that's happening in the background. They don't see all that happened to build up to that place. They don't see all that happens after the retreat to make sure that everything is integrated properly. And they also don't see the whole business aspect. So I noticed that happening a lot, right? A lot of people, I actually went on some retreats that were, the experiences were not conducive to the goal of the retreat. And there's never any judgment there, right? It's just sometimes you don't know the things that you needed to know before you needed to know them. And so sometimes we have this vision and we haven't actually had the experience to know how to put on these retreat experiences. And we think that surface level is all that there is. And so I started to notice that happening in the industry. And when we saw this happen in the coaching industry, we saw a huge level of the trust going down in the coaching industry when it grew exponentially and everybody was doing it just because it looked like it was something they wanted to do. It looked like it was something easy to do. And there weren't any regulations to really make sure that people were doing them in integrity and authentically. Mm-hmm. And so as I saw the retreat industry exponentially growing, my thought was, how can I serve this industry in a powerful way that's aligned with my skills, that also aligns with my passion for this industry, that does not want to see what happened in the coaching industry happen in our retreat industry. Because, for example, I always tell this story, and it's like retreat. So imagine you go on a retreat. It's your first retreat you ever go to. And the person that is hosting the retreat doesn't necessarily have the background in hosting the experience. And it's your first experience. So it's not a great experience for you, right? Well, most likely you probably are never going on retreat again, especially if it was a very bad experience, which I have unfortunately had experiences like that where the experience was something where if it was my first one, I probably would have never gone on retreat again. And I had that happen with a chiropractor. Went to a chiropractor. He threw my back out. I was bedridden for a month afterwards. If that was the first time I went to a chiropractor, I'd be like, anybody that goes to a chiropractor is crazy. What are you thinking? Luckily, I had been seeing a chiropractor for 10 years before that happened. So I was like, okay, nope, this is just this chiropractor.
Yeah.
And so again, I always say that it's not that anybody in the industry or that steps into the industry is doing any harm purposefully or doing it, but there is a lot to know about putting on an event and holding space and holding a safe container for people who are vulnerable, who are going through change, who you don't know how deep their trauma might be. And so when I know this is a very, very long explanation, but my passion for this industry is immense because I have had it transform my life. I have seen it transform so many people's lives in ways that just tear me up, because I'm so happy for the people when I see before they went on the retreat and then 5 years later, and it's like their lives are so freaking amazing. And so that is why I started the network. I started the network as a place where people can get the education that they need to create sustainable retreat businesses, but also to create embodied leadership within the industry, as well as community where we support each other and we collaborate with each other and we bounce ideas off of each other and we check in and we make sure that, because even as leaders, we need people to hold space for us. And so it's a community where you have that support. And so that is the passion, that is the mission behind this network.
That's beautiful. I love that.
That was very long-winded.
Yeah. Well, but you can see your passion in it, which is great. And I have I've had those experiences myself where I've gone to something and it was awful. And then, I've kind of backed away from it for a while because I was like, okay, I'm good. I don't need any more of that. But then, like you said, when you have other experiences, you realize, okay, it's just that person needs a little more. You were so elegant in the way you said it. Um, but yeah, that person just needs a little more education. They just need to be given the right tools and the right leg up to do a better job next time.
Absolutely. I mean, we all have beautiful gifts that need to be shared with specific people, unique people in the world. But that it also means that usually the gift that you're meant to share has nothing to do with knowing how to put on a retreat experience. They're two totally different boxes of skills that it takes.
So do you help people get their vision and purpose clear and, like who they're targeting? Is that something you help with?
Absolutely. So the main thing that I've done in my business for the last however many years it's been now is I've done logistics coordination and on-site management. And a big part of that is taking what the person's gift is, right? So whatever they're here to share. A lot of people that come to me, they're business owners already. They have a set of skills. They have a gift that they're already sharing with clients because I work mostly with business owners as a business advisor, obviously. And so they have a set of skills that they're already using in their business. And now they want to turn it into a retreat experience, either to elevate their current offerings or to create just an additional revenue stream in their business, an additional connection point for their clients. And so with that, I take them through their vision of, okay, what is it that you want to share? What are your goals? And we also typically at the beginning, it's not just checking in with what do you want this one retreat to look like, right? It is, what do you want your long-term vision of your business to look like? What are the goals long-term? Because this also shows me who are going to be my ideal clients versus who aren't. So that's one of the things that, we talk about is who are our ideal clients. Well, for me, with the people that I work with, they are people who are more so looking for a long-term commitment to the retreat industry. They don't want to just host one retreat. They want to actually do this long-term. So we look at, where is your business at currently? What is the goal long-term for your retreat so that we can create a really great foundation, both in the business and in the retreat foundation? Because what I notice a lot in my business advising is that many people start a business based on passion, which is great. You want that passion behind there. But oftentimes they don't check in with their core values and create a business that's aligned with their personal and professional core values. So we always look at that we are creating from a place that is honoring our core values in that moment. Because what I notice is when you don't build from your core values, even if you're super passionate about it, you end up burning out because you are not aligning with what is your true alignment, what you are here to do and with your purpose. So we always look at that. And I say, when we build from the foundation of core values, you can build this beautiful mansion on this amazing foundation. And sure, in a couple of years, your core values might change a little bit. You might have a kid, your family situation might change, so your core values might shift slightly. But when you do that with your business, all you do is remodel a room in that beautiful mansion. But if you don't build on the foundation of the core values, mostly what I see is people about year 3 to 5, they're burning the whole thing down. They're burning their entire business down because they're like, I cannot take one more day working in my business as much as they love to do it. They just haven't built from that strong foundation. And that's sad to me when I see that, because that 3 to 5 year mark, that's typically where you're really starting to grow some momentum. But so many people are burning out in those years. So even though they've built the momentum, they're just done. I can't do it anymore. So yeah.
The offer is so important. And I was going to ask you about standing out in a crowded market, but you already, I mean, you answered that. You answered so many things. So let me just pick it apart there. The core values are so important because I've seen it also, and I've seen it in lots of people. I've seen it in myself. When you're especially when you have this entrepreneurial spirit and you're into building businesses and trying different things, yes, you follow your heart, but then you're also thinking about what's a good business idea, like what, and that can be very dangerous because if it doesn't align with who you are at your core, what you believe in, what 50 years from now you're like, yeah, I would still be doing this 50 years from now, then you're going to burn out. It's not sustainable. And then to the point of like standing out, a lot of people, and I think it's just human nature, you know, like if you think of kids when they're born, they mimic, you know, they copy what they see around them. It's like, okay, this is how you hold your hands, this is how you talk, this is how you and we copy each other. And I
Yeah.
don't always think it's from a bad place. It's just like, oh, that's a good idea, let me try that too. But if you're not checking in with yourself and saying, is this really you? Is this what you have to offer? Then you're not going to be able to keep that up. And like you said, there's going to come a time where you not being you is going to be tired of that and just be like, I can't do this anymore. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it creates this chase because you're just constantly chasing the next thing that looks like it's the sexy thing to do in that time period. Yeah. So you're just constantly chasing that and you're never really building that really strong foundation and that really strong mansion that is yours. Like you said,
Mm.
that is yours because we each are unique, even though we have similar passions or maybe some similar backgrounds. We all have had unique experiences in our life and we are here to share that. Like tell people all the time, like we are on this planet with 8 billion some people because we are meant to work together, to share experiences, to allow, okay, this person hasn't gone through this and I have, like,
Mm.
how can I inspire you? How can I share it? And then how do you receive that and integrate it into your life to then create your own journey and go on your own experience and do what you're meant to do?
Yeah. So how would you advise someone in that situation? Because it sounds like the first step of a successful, sustainable business is to know what you bring to the table and how you serve who you serve. And that's the hardest thing, isn't it? It's always like the
It
hardest
is.
thing to figure out.
It is. It's harder now than ever because we are just bombarded with external information on a regular basis. We are constantly seeing what other people are doing. We're constantly, no matter who you are, no matter how strong of, how grounded you are in who you are, we all compare ourselves to when we're scrolling through social media. It's just natural. As you said, it's human nature. And so we are in a time that it's the most difficult time probably in history to actually know who we are and know what our strengths are and what we uniquely bring to the table because there's too much external noise for many of us to hear it. And so it does take actually having a practice of tapping into yourself. I think that no matter who you are in business or what type of gift you give, there has to be this period of going inward to really understand. And it's a journey for most people. I've been on this journey of self-reflection and self-awareness for over a decade. And it's a daily practice. It's a daily practice to tap in and say, like, where am I at today? Because the things that I love change too. The things that I want to do. You can't fit anyone in a box. And I think that that's one of the most important things when you are trying to figure out how do I attract the right people to me? How do I build my unique offer? How do I build my unique business? It's understanding that you're not going to fit in a box and neither is your audience. So the different layers that you bring together are actually what create what you have to offer. So there's going to be elements of what other people do. But it's checking in, like you said, and saying, is this aligned for me? I've done this a lot in my business because I have business coaches as well. I'm a big believer. If you're a retreat facilitator, you should be going on retreats. If you're a business advisor, you should have a business advisor. Like, because if you believe in what you're doing, then how are you not doing it for yourself? And it doesn't mean that I always have a business advisor or that I'm on retreat every month, but no, it's integrated into my life because I believe in the practice. But one of the things with my business advisors is that we see trends in business, especially for entrepreneurs. We see trends of like what's working and what's not working. So many years ago, courses were the big thing, and then it changes. But what I encourage people to do, my clients to do, is it's okay to know about the trends. It's okay to see the trend, but then it's really, really important to decide whether that trend is for you. Even if I were to, when I advise my clients, I tell them all the time, this is the marketing strategy that I would encourage you to utilize. But if it doesn't feel authentic or genuine for you, it's not going to work. So, and that's the other thing is if we mimic something outside of ourselves that's not in alignment, whether it's not going to work in the instant moment or whether it's not going to work in the long term, it's not going to work in one sense or another because it isn't who you are. So it's really, really important to check in with alignment. I had for a very long time many business advisors that wanted me to create courses for this industry. And still, even with the Retreat Professionals Network, I don't consider the educational side of it a course. It is a retreat wisdom hub. It is a bank of information that people can utilize, but it's not a course. And I had probably for 6 years people that are like, build a course. It'll make you a lot of money, right? We all hear that, like, do this, it'll make you a lot of money. But it wasn't in alignment because I believe that each person is unique. So how can I serve somebody on a platform that is only giving one piece of information and not actually listening to a person of what are their passions, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, what are their core values, what does their lifestyle look like? I can't assist somebody from a business advisor standpoint in a grand scale without actually being able to dive in. I also, probably one of the unique things for me in my business advising and in the retreat industry is that I don't just have the logistical analytical side. I am a very intuitive person. So it takes meeting with a person and feeling into what they have to offer so that I can then also serve them. So it's one of the major things is don't do something that's a trend just to do it because it's a trend. Actually tap into it and then decide. It might look like you're doing it, but maybe doing it in a unique way that serves you, that feels in alignment for you.
Yeah. When you said that, it made me think of don't follow what makes money and then learn to love it, but follow what you love and then learn how you can make it profitable.
Love it. Yes, absolutely.
So let's say someone is clear on who they serve, how they serve them, and their purpose. And now they need to make building retreats a profitable business. Like what would be the next steps?
All right. So I'm like, okay, I know, do we talk about marketing? Next steps would be, so they know their purpose, they know their audience.
I guess more from less from marketing, but more from how do they make sure that the systems they have in place are going to keep you sustainable? And then like, what do they do with the money they're getting? Like, do you reinvest it? Do you save some? Things like that, because we don't, I think the first thing you think of is, okay, I need to create this and then I need to market this. And then that's it. Like, we don't go beyond that point. So I want to go beyond that point with you. Like,
absolutely.
How do you make this sustainable so that it's an oak tree that you can count on?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Thank you for rephrasing that. Cause I'm like that. I could go down a couple different paths with this. So one is knowing your long-term plan, right? So really knowing what does adding retreats do for your long-term plan as in your business. Are you integrating this into your current business model? So for example, do you have a coaching program, or do you have a group program, or do you have sessions that you work with your clients in, and you're looking to add retreats to that actual offer? So maybe it's something where they're doing 3 months before they go on retreat and then 3 months after. So really understanding how this fits into your business, or is it just an extension of your business? So is it a completely separate leg of your business that you want to offer? When it comes to the financial side, so yes, let's talk about that. So one, money. I love talking about money. In the network yesterday on our gather and growth session, we were talking about money, and I love talking about money. I think that it's so important, and it is the business side that so many retreat facilitators forget about. They don't necessarily understand. I don't want to say they don't understand, but maybe they don't have the experience with how the cash flow happens with retreats. And so therefore that can really throw them off. And I owned a business in construction as well. And construction is one of the most difficult industries when it comes to cash flow management. And so retreats are easy for me. So what I will say, first and foremost, when you decide to add retreats to your business, you're going to need a little bit of some capital to put into it when you decide to do it. So it's like anything else. When we add new offerings to our business, or when we start a new business, we need capital to get it started. If you don't have the capital to get it started, it's just going to be more challenging. Can you do it? Absolutely. I'm a person that's like, you can do anything your heart desires. But a lot of people, when they go into it, they don't have that capital to put towards it. So then they are in this dance of, well, I'm going to launch it, but I didn't actually reserve the venue yet. Or I'm going to launch it and I'm going to wait until I get some money and then I'll secure the venue. And you create this dance that is not super conducive to the long-term success of your business, the long-term sustainability of your retreat business. And it's for a couple reasons. When people attend a retreat, the venue is going to be really important. So if you don't have that secured yet, or you're marketing a venue that you don't have secured yet, you're putting yourself in a challenging situation. So just know that you're going to need to have a little bit of capital to get the retreats going. Now, the other side is your cash management of the money coming in. Every single retreat is going to look different. So this is where I say that I find it can be really challenging not working with people one-on-one. So for those of you that are listening to this, it can be challenging because every situation is unique. So I'm going to use a couple different scenarios just because that's how my brain works. So for example, I hosted a retreat in Bali this last October, and it sold out a year prior. So launched it and it sold out in 72 hours. And so I had half of the people, fabulous turnout for that. So I had half the people pay in full up front and half the people went on payment plans. What that meant was I had a very large sum of money come in quickly. And for most retreat facilitators, it would just sit in the same bank account, right? First off, I'm like, guys, I go on a lot of tangents, but let me tell you, just since we're touching on that, if you are starting a retreat business and you do not have a business checking account or a business bank account, that's step one. Okay. You got to have that. You have to separate it out from personal finances. And if you do have a business account already, but it's a part of your other business, I actually encourage usually having a separate account for your retreats. And we're going to dive into why as I go into this. So a lot of retreat facilitators will have it all go into one place. And then you are mixing and mingling your money. So what can happen is you lose sight of the money that is going to have to go out to vendors for that retreat, unless you're highly, highly organized. And again, typically what I see is most retreat facilitators, that's not their skill set. Business management, that's not their skill set. They might have an online business manager. Great. If they do, they're going to have somebody to help them. But the majority don't, right? This is the majority of people that are looking to host retreats. This is something that they've been inspired by, they're motivated by, it looks amazing, and they don't necessarily have these systems or tools or resources available to them. So when you mix and mingle your funds, what can happen then is, all right, great, like Bali retreat, 30 grand just dumped into my bank account. If I don't do something with that, what's going to happen over the next year? It's going to dwindle because I'm going to invest in my company maybe, or maybe I'm not going to be as mindful about where the money's going out. And then when 4 months prior to the retreat comes, well, where's that 30 grand that I have to pay out to the venue or whatever, the portion of it. So there's a lot of different strategies that you can use for this. Some people will just have like a separate savings account. And this is different for every location. Okay. Bali is one of those where you don't have to pay a lot up front typically. And then your payments to the venue and other vendors are due closer to it. Domestically, that's going to look different in the United States. And then every country is a little bit different. So for me, something like that, I actually move it into a low risk investment account so that money that I don't have to pay out yet is now making me more money also. That is something that I will say, I'm not a financial advisor, guys. This is what I do personally. But for me, it moves that money into something that's making me additional money. I have a financial advisor that does that for me. So like I trust them to put it in a place that, and typically it's something like, depending on where rates are at, it might be a high yield interest account or high yield savings account, a CD or a money market. So it's nothing, there's not risk there. And so it's not making me a ton of extra money, but if it's a substantial amount of money over 10, 12 months, it's going to give me maybe an extra $1,000. Well, heck, that's $1,000 that I didn't have. Fabulous. So some people will do that. Some will just move it into a savings account. So whatever their business, they have their business checking, whoever they have that with, they'll just have a savings account and they'll move that money into that. And they know, okay, that's that retreat money. Your additional layer comes in when you start to host multiple retreats and you are selling multiple retreats at the same time. And that's where it's even more important that you are super organized. That might look like additional accounts. It might look like spreadsheets, just where you're tracking. I use both. I have separate accounts as well as spreadsheets. Okay. I'm like,
No, this is good. I'm just like,
I'm like, I keep going, but I think the other side that I want to touch on as far as profitability is that sometimes within the service, I don't want to call it just this type of serving, right? This type of serving where we are serving from our hearts, we are serving with a gift that we were given, we are serving with a life purpose. Sometimes there is this mindset, whether you believe it or not, but subconsciously that we have inherited generationally and societally that we are not meant to make money from this. We are supposed to just serve. And what I want to say is that in every single thing, that money is just an energy. It is just the currency that we live by. You are not wrong for making money for the gifts that you have. You are changing people's lives. And the more that you are able to bring in, the more lives you are able to change. And so if your goal is to change people's lives, there can be other ways that you serve with, maybe you start a scholarship program for a part of your retreats, but just know that the profit is important for multiple reasons. You cannot have a sustainable business without profit. It's just not possible. The math won't math. So you have to have that profit. And I think one of your other questions is, well, what do you do with the profit? And that's going to depend on everybody's circumstances as far as, okay, well, you're taking portions of that profit and you're using that for your next retreat down payment. That's traditionally how a lot of retreat facilitators run their retreats. So a portion of their profit from retreat 1 will go into funding retreat 2. And it just creates this cash flow cycle. And I could dive into the budgets and the how do you filter in your profit? How do you package things? But I feel like that might go a little bit too deep for today.
maybe we can. Well, first, I just want to say how amazing you are and how grateful I am that you're here and sharing all of this so openly. Yes, this is what Retreat Builder is about. And I just want to say thank you. I appreciate you. This is so important. I think this is the first time on Retreat Builder that I've spoken to someone specifically about finances. And especially, in the wellness industry, we focus a lot, or the focus tends to be on mental, emotional, physical, but we don't think about financial well-being is also a thing, and it can be fun, and it can be, I'm in my financial era, if you haven't noticed, because I'm just, I just love it. I love feeling organized. I love nurturing it, looking at it. And you're right, there is a lot of trauma that we carry from the past, or maybe even I was thinking in every area you'll find charlatans, people that talk a big game to take your money and scam you. And so I think a lot of people are afraid to be seen as that. So they're like, I'm going to do it for free because I'm pure of spirit. And then, okay, but like you said, you need to be able to sustain yourself. There's been programs and retreats where I've paid a lot of money. And if it was worth it, I never say, wow, that person is making me pay for my transformation. I think I say, wow, that was worth every penny. So yeah, and the part about just being able to organize the different accounts, knowing where things are coming from, reinvesting, it made me think about a lot of the times we think our issue is marketing when it's really not. The issue is the offer,
Yeah.
and that's why the marketing is not working. And the same thing, it's not necessarily that you need more people, but it's that once you get the money from the retreat, you know what to do with it to make it grow. And yeah, so you said so many things. Those are the things I wanted to say back in response.
Yes. Well, and to touch on, I'm like, my brain just went multiple different directions, and I'm like, I feel there was something I wanted to touch on, and it left as quick as it entered my brain. So
Oh,
apparently it was right. Like, was it not needed? Um, but it is. It's how we create sustainability in our business. Money is really just, we think about it, like you said, there's a lot of trauma in it, in the money side. And ultimately, that's what I was going to say. Like you said, a lot of people, it's not a marketing issue at all. It is often more our mindset around it. It's especially, I see this much more in women. I work mostly with women. This industry is mostly women, right? We're starting to see more men and men's retreat enter the industry. We're starting to see more couples retreats enter the industry. And I'm really excited for that because the men in our world need this support too. And I'm loving seeing that enter into the industry so, so much. I have been a little bit sitting back going, who's going to start this movement of different men's retreats? And there's such an array that's starting to happen. And so I absolutely love it. But what I find, there's multiple things that happen. As women, we do have some generational trauma around our worth and value. The majority of women do, from the people that I've worked with. And so, like you said, a lot of times it's not about the marketing. It's about that we put something together and we don't understand our value. And I've run into this time and time again. I ran a construction business with my ex-husband, who is a brilliant contractor, and I could see his value so much more than he could see his value. So it was a really good team because I could elevate his value as the person running his business, even though he couldn't see it. And so it created a lot of success. A lot of us in the retreat industry, we don't have those people, those outside people that are like, no, I see you. You are valuable. What you have is valuable. And so that is even so, like I said, where this community, this network came into play, because we need those people who understand the industry that we work in, because it's really important to understand. I worked in construction management for a long time, so I saw all the things. A lot of us don't necessarily have, we might have friends that understand what we do, but maybe they're not in business, or maybe they've never been on retreat. And so we need that support network of people who understand the work that we're doing, that can cheer us on, that can help us sit in that energy of receiving and knowing our value, knowing our worth, knowing that there's no shame or guilt for making money doing what you love. I think that that's what it comes down to, is that we're so scared to play and have fun and have money flow to us while doing that, because that's just not what we've been taught. We've been taught, no, you have to work hard, you have to hustle, you have to do this. And if you're not, then the money's not going to come. And no, you can play, you can have fun, you can do what you love, and you can make great money doing it. And you can create amazing impact in this world.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
And oh, no, it just happened to me. It was there and then it left. Come back. Um, oh, the community. I think I'm calling it a community of people this year that, I mean, I don't know what your experience has been, but people tend to be very nice in the way they give feedback, highlighting the positives, focusing on the positives, was just great. And then the negative feedback that you usually receive are, like haters, trollers. It's not necessarily constructive. It's just like to get under your skin. But there is, and it's very rare when you find those people that can give you feedback of like, this is where you're fucking up. Because sometimes that's, sometimes everyone just passes you by and they're like, oh, it was great. Oh, it was good. Oh, I loved it so much. Oh, it was. And then they're not telling you what they didn't like. They're not telling you like you should probably, I would get rid of this. Or, you're so good at A, but I think B, it's just like, you don't need it. That helping us to, and we see this with cycles of like the new moon and the full moon of like, what are you bringing
Yeah.
into your life and what are you releasing from your life? So there's a lot of focus of like what you're doing well and what you should bring in. But I love it. I just want to put it out there so that we can, start being more like this. I love it when people say, maybe do less of this, or, like
Yeah.
this part, because that it also helps, because a lot of times when we're running around like chickens without a head and we're juggling these 6 things, and we don't need to, because it turns out people don't like these 3. So if I could just get rid of these 3,
Exactly.
oh, what a relief.
Absolutely. Yeah, we need that. We need that. And it's moving into this space of, I read the yamas and niyamas every couple of years. And it is the yoga, if you haven't heard of it, it's the yogic ethics. And it talks about the second yama is truthfulness. And it talks about how being truthful from a place. Now, the first yama is non-harm, right? So non-violence. We learn about how our words can harm. Nonviolence isn't just about like, don't go out and like punch somebody in the face. It's about you can hurt people with your words. You hurt yourself. We harm ourselves more than anybody with our criticism. And then you move into truthfulness, and we forget that we are not here to be nice. Can you be a nice person? Absolutely. But when we can sit in our truth, when we can sit and be real from a place of nonviolence, that is where we actually get to see momentum and change in our world. So as thought leaders, as embodied leaders, we do need people outside of us that can say, hey, I noticed this. This would be a way that it could be better. Or this is, like you said, this is something that I would just probably drop off your retreat agenda because you got too much going on and there needs to be a little space or whatever it might be. But you're right. We need that feedback. The nice feedback, that's fantastic and that's great. And we all love that validation and that reassurance, but we can't grow without hearing how somebody else's experience is, because we're experiencing it from our own lens as well. So we do need that from other people's lens of how did you experience it? And, how can I make it better? Not just how was it great, but how can I make it better? How can I do better as an embodied leader?
Yeah. And I mean, as long as we're on the topic, I think a lot of us are nice by default, because maybe when we tried to give feedback, I feel like I'm getting deja vu. I definitely said this to somebody, but we encounter defensiveness, and then you're like, oh, well, I'm never going to say anything again, because
Yeah.
I'm just trying to help you out, and so maybe, it's our responsibility to be more open to seeing. Sometimes it's difficult to put yourself in that position to give someone feedback that's not necessarily something they want to hear, but it's something that is going to help them. So if we can, as a community, be more open to seeing that effort, because it's not always easy.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it's just really, it's kind of like we do with some of our friends, right? So for those of you that are in this space of, of really understanding or integrating, I shouldn't say understanding, but integrating wellness and energy work and things of that nature. It's like with some of our friends, right? When we need to vent or we have something going on, we ask permission first. Like, hey, do you have space to just hear me, scream about this situation that I had? We don't just send them a message out of the blue screaming into the mic, because heck, they might have been having a bad day too. And they're like, I cannot handle, I'm not in a place to hold space for you. My bubble is not solid. I need some space. And so I think also that sometimes for some people, if that has been their experience, because sometimes we don't give it, like you said, because that person might not receive it the same way. So something that we can do as embodied leaders is just ask permission first and just say, hey, I have, I have something that I wanted to mention to you. Are you open to hearing what I have to say? Are you open to receiving just some of the criticism's not the right word, but some of
Feedback.
and feedback. Yeah. Some of the feedback that I have for you. And that allows us then to feel safe in providing that feedback, because if the person is more of a defensive person, they probably will not will say, no, I'm not open to receive it. They might say it in a different way, but it does create this kind of safety for you of asking permission, feeling safe to then share it. And even if that person does get defensive, you did ask for that permission. And so it does create just a little bit more safety in feeling like you can share. So
I like that. And bringing it back to business, I think, you can be passionate and emotional about your business, but business is actually very black and white. And I think that's the best way to conduct it because, yeah, what are your thoughts on business and emotions?
Oh, okay. So our emotions feed our inspiration, right? Our emotions feed how we move in our business, how we create in our business. So I talk about the feminine and masculine a lot. It's very, very important to me. It's very important in the retreat industry that you do actually integrate both energies into your retreats. And so let's talk about it from that standpoint.
Okay.
So the feminine is where you have the emotion, right? That's where you have a little bit more of the emotion. So that is your creative process. So having emotion in your creative process is extremely beneficial in your business. So that's like your layer of the feminine in your business. The masculine is where you do get that black and white, right? Okay. It's your contracts, it's your systems, it's your accounting, it's all the analytical, it's all the doing. That is, nope, this is the clause in my contract and it is black and white. So I do believe that we have, that it is important to have the emotion in the creation process, because that is what actually fuels the business and your uniqueness in the business. But when it comes to the actual business structure and the business systems, yes, very black and white. And I do think you have to remove the emotion from that part of the business.
Yes. We're on the same page then. I feel the same way. And it's just easier because especially when you think about working with other people, which is it can become a headache if you're not careful. But
Yeah.
when you focus on the facts is the facts.
Yeah. And that's where we can go back all the way to the foundations, because what your core values do for you is it allows you to create boundaries in your business that don't cross your values, that don't disturb your values. And so when you do that from the get-go, and guys, when I talk about this stuff, it's like everybody else's business. We learn because we've experienced it. I did it when I owned those 2 businesses in my 20s. I literally almost every single night would wake up in the middle of the night and I'd be responding to people's DMs and text messages because I had no boundaries around my time at all. And guess what? I crashed and I freaking burned because it's not sustainable. You shouldn't be up at 1 o'clock in the morning responding to people's messages. There's no reason for it. You do not, unless I'm not a freaking heart surgeon. So what I do is fantastic, but I'm not saving anybody's life at 1 o'clock in the morning. No, if somebody's traveling or they're on retreat or something like that, and I'm handling like management from afar, a little bit of a different story, because maybe they're in Bali and it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon there. But that was not the case in any of these situations. It was silly questions that could have waited to the morning, could have probably waited an entire week. So when we start from the core values side and build our boundaries off of that, it allows, again, it's just another layer of that foundation to make sure that we're in a space and that's where, like you said, like that black and white comes in of like, the emotion is removed. It's like, no, this is just a boundary. It's not
exactly
frustration. It's not anger. It's not upset. This is my boundary. I don't check messages after 5 p.m. or, whatever it is.
And this is important too, because what makes a business sustainable is not just these technical or logistical systems, but also the emotional systems. Because if you don't have those boundaries, you can burn out because you keep getting into, these emotional moments or circumstances that exhaust you, deplete you, frustrate you. And if you can put boundaries and pieces in place to avoid those things so that things just, they run, there's no emotion, then that adds to you being able to do it longer and happier.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so I have a question. Are there common financial mistakes you've seen retreat hosts make, and how can they avoid
Absolutely.
them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The number one financial mistake that I see retreat leaders make is they don't have a well-rounded budget. So, or they don't really know how to put together their budget. So if you haven't hosted a retreat before, it's hard to know all of the layers that need to go into a budget. So a lot of times what I'll see is if I start working with someone and they've kind of started to work in it and then they're like, I realize I need to hire you, is that their budget might only have like 5 line items: venue, food, maybe activities. The budget that I do, I'm like, I can actually tell you how many line items there are. Can I actually go off of this and you can still see me and hear me?
Um, what do you mean by go off? Like go into another browser?
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Like, I
should
think
be
so.
able to, as long as you don't.
Yeah, I'm there already. So,
Okay,
so if you're still
awesome.
seeing and hearing me, we're good.
Yeah.
So my budget has 20 line items on it. And the majority that I see for especially first time facilitators. And here's why this is so important. Okay. We can make mistakes in business and a lot of times we can come back from them. But what I noticed in the industry when I initially got into the industry was a lot of people would host one retreat and then they were done because guess what? They messed up their budget. They ended up with debt from the retreat. They had a really hard time because they didn't have the tools or the systems. And so they didn't want to do it ever again. And that's doing a disservice to yourself as well as everybody that you serve. And that was why I entered the industry. Was I wanted to see retreat leaders be able to create these sustainable businesses because their gifts are important. And retreats are sure, we have a lot of different ways to deliver our gifts, but retreats are one of, in my opinion, they're the most transformational way to deliver our gifts. But I think across the board, most people would agree that they are one of the most transformational. And the reason why it removes you from your traditional environment, and that allows you to create clarity in and of itself. When we're removed out of our typical environment of all the things, the laundry and the dishes and the kids and the spouse and the neighbors and everybody that is just our typical, and we're removed out from that, we're allowed to align with who we are and what we need to hear, and the clarity starts to come. So retreats are one of the most transformational ways to deliver our gifts. And like I said, I was just seeing a lot of retreat leaders not able to sustain it just because they didn't have the tools. It wasn't that they weren't extremely gifted, and it wasn't that they couldn't create incredible experiences. They just didn't know the business side. And sometimes even not knowing the business side meant that their schedules weren't flowing right. Okay. Because the schedule is really important too, guys. I know I'm going off on 50 different tangents, and I hope that I remember by the time I get back to the original tangent what I wanted to say. But your schedule is so important because it's almost like a book. You need to work people up to that climax, which is like that deep transformation, especially if you're hosting transformational retreats. There's a lot of different types of retreats, but a retreat is an experience of transformation. There's a lot of different things that are being called retreats these days. A retreat is an actual experience that creates transformation. So whatever the deep transformation is, happens at about 70% through the retreat, which is very similar to books as well. This allows time to build up, to get your people to a place where they are open to having that transformation. They're in a safe place. They have seen that you have created a safe container for them to do this, and that it's a non-judgmental container. And then it also allows the time for them to come back from what they worked through. If you have that climax at 90% through the retreat, you are leaving people walking back into a very loud world, completely raw in that transformation. And that can be very, very, very difficult for many people. So we were talking about money mistakes. I got onto schedule mistakes.
She's like the transformation. Okay, money.
Tell that I love what I do. Like, I could talk about this all day, every day. Is my favorite thing in the world.
Yes, it shows.
So budget is one of the biggest things, is that they just don't have a well-rounded budget, and they also don't know what to expect the numbers to be, because a budget is a budget for a reason. We don't know the actual expenses yet. We can, a lot of things like the venue and the food, we can usually get pretty accurate numbers on. But for example, you need a miscellaneous line item in your retreat budget, because stuff happens. You can be the best planner, the best retreat facilitator ever. Stuff happens, especially in our travel world right now. There are so many unforeseen. So yeah, that's probably the biggest financial mistake that I see people make is, and then just not managing the money well, not understanding how to manage the money as it comes in and make sure that it stays organized so that they have the money for the retreat when the retreat comes around.
Yeah. Wow. Really good conversation, I just want to say. So, since we're nearing the end, I just have one more question for you.
Yeah. I'll try to keep it short.
Just say it like it is. Don't worry about the time. What is one thing, if you could only say one thing to the retreat community, what would it be?
That me say one thing.
One and a half things.
So what I will say is, if I had one thing to say, is build a community of people that you trust, that you can bounce things off of, that will hold space for you, because what you have to share with the world is so important. And if you don't create that space for yourself, it just can become really, really hard. And what I want more than anything is to see these retreat facilitators really, truly succeed in this industry, because the transformation that is needed in our world right now is so important. And the work that you're doing is important. And so that's, if I had one thing to say, that would be what I would say.
Yes. So join the Retreat Professionals Network on Facebook. Okay. Thank you so much, Sara. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you.
It has been so much fun. Thank you.